St. John's River is actually our second invitational tournament of the year. A little bit different than the tour events in that you're actually fishing with another competitor of equal stature. Basically, there's no qualification process. We're fishing with a guy who is sharing the boat with you. He gets half the control of the boat. So there's a lot more things that go on in an invitational tournament than just taking a guy fishing and doing your own thing. You have to share the water, share the time. There's a little psychology involved, too, in trying to get the guy to go with you and do your thing. And, you know, is it your area or my area, or where are we going to start? There's just a lot more involved than just a pro-am event where the guy gets in the boat and you carry him to the fish. Just a little bit different in that respect. You know, St. John's River is basically a flowing river system that ultimately ends up at Lake George. From Lake George, it flows actually kind of northeast into the Atlantic Ocean. Most of the fishing is done from Palatka south down to Lake George. There was some schooling fish activity in Lake George, but we had a lot of high winds, and Lake George was really muddy. I practiced in Lake George for one full day and had minimal success. I actually found the best fishing to be, and it has historically been for me, by going through the river and into a lock and then going up into an impoundment called Rodman Reservoir. Rodman Reservoir is a fairly sizable impoundment, and what I like about Rodman and why I focused on it in this tournament was the fact that it's in what's called a drawdown period. Every 3 years they actually draw the lake down to eradicate the vegetation and the hydrilla. Well, when you have that, even though Rodman's not been very good this summer, when you have that drawdown up in the river, you get a current flow, a good current flow. And in years past, I found that when you have that current flow, the bass just kind of gravitate to that river like a magnet. Plus, all those vast flat areas are becoming drier every day, and the water's getting shallower, so those fish are gravitating to that river channel. And actually, that's where I found the bulk of my fish, was fishing about 4 or 5 bends in the river channel at Rodman Reservoir. And the current flow was fairly substantial. And I found in practice that if I would fish the outside bends with a little gold jerkbait, fish the outside bends of the river channel, kind of parallel cast, make long cast, and work the bait down at kind of a 45-degree angle, letting the current carry the bait, that I could catch not a lot of fish, but I could catch some decent fish, a lot of 12 and 13 inchers, and an occasional 2.5 pounder. And as tough as the fishing is, limits are going to be very rare, and as tough as the fishing is, I found out that was just, you know, all a guy's going to need, you know, maybe 7-8 pounds a day to do really well in that tournament. And that's my game plan, you know, is to get up there in that river and to fish every day for 5 bites, 7-8 pounds a day. And I got to believe 7 or 8 pounds a day, when this whole thing shakes out, is going to be a good finish. Downside to Rodman Reservoir is the fact that you got to go through the locks, okay? And the locks are going to cost me a lot of time. They have an actual locking schedule, but I'm going to only get, on my very best day, if I'm in the 3rd flight, I will get about 5 hours of fishing in Rodman Reservoir. A slow day or a bad situation like a fog period, which inevitably we could have a fog day, might only get a couple, 3 hours of fishing in. So that's the downside to Rodman. It's the only place I know where there's any fish, though, and that's what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to concentrate on that.
Now, here's Joe Thomas with the Outdoor Channel tip of the day.
Hi, I'm Joe Thomas, and this Team Outdoor Channel tip has to do with pegging your sinker. You know, a long time ago, we thought that the best way to peg a sinker was just to take a toothpick and slide it between the weight and the line. Big problem there. When you take a hard toothpick, slide it against that monofilament line, it actually crimps the line, and a lot of times when you set the hook on a big one, that's when the line's going to break. There's a new product on the market called a Peg-It. It's basically a little plastic nail that we are able to slide right in between the sinker and the monofilament line. Just slip it right up in there, grab the tip, pull it up, lock it into place, just like this right here. Take your diagonal cutters or your clippers, clip off the excess, and now you've got your weight pegged with a nice soft piece of plastic. Won't slide, but didn't damage your line. So when you get that big one on, you're going to get him out of that grass mat.
It's time for an Angler on Tour trivia question. This question is, what's the total number of top 10 finishes Joe has earned in BASS events in his career? Is it A, 13, B, 18, C, 21, or D, 24? We'll give you the answer to that question, plus we'll show you more aspects.
You know, one of the things that people have difficulty envisioning is how do you police a fishing tournament? You know, everybody says, well, it keeps you from cheating. It's the guy in the boat with you that keeps you from cheating, and that's the reason for pairing people together. And there's also a lot of regulations on when we start and when we come in. We basically go in like a staggered start, one boat immediately following another. It's not the old shotgun start where everybody just blasts off anymore. We go out one person at a time, and we have a designated check-in time. We're broken into flights, and every 10 minutes a new group of 10 to 15 boats will come in to weigh in. That way it staggers the weigh-in out. And then you flip-flop every day, so you have the same amount of fishing time every day for the full tournament. Each competitor is changed day to day, and that kind of regulates it. There's a check-in boat that actually we pull up to, and that's the man with the official time, and he's watching to make sure that we're in. Believe it or not, we are penalized 1 pound for every minute that we're late, up to 15 minutes, which is total disqualification after that. Have a little flag, we show them our flag, they give us the bags, and we put the flag in, and there you go, you're checked in. Because we actually bag our fish on the water, a lot of club tournaments, they pull their boats out up on the parking lot and bag their fish, not BASS. We bag them to keep any hanky-panky from happening. We actually bag our fish with our boats in the water, and you have to stay within sight of your partner all the way through him signing your weigh ticket. That's a rule. And I'm very meticulous when I'm bagging my fish and try and make sure one doesn't slip out of the live well. Lots of money's been lost by fish jumping out of the live well while guys trying to get them bagged. Skeeter has a pump-out system. We pull a little plug out, turn the aerator on, it almost works in reverse. It pumps the water out of our live wells, dries our live wells out to where there's only a few inches of water, and we can get in and scoop the fish out. Bass has a unique situation, too, to where they use bags that have holes in them, so we're not carrying the fish in a contained amount of water. We actually put the fish in the bag, and we go to a series of tanks where the water is cooled, continually cooler every time we get to a new tank. We dip a bag of water, the water flows out, and you're constantly aerating the fish, which is very critical. And remember, in bass rules, BASS rules, 1/4 of a pound penalty per dead fish. That's pretty big. You lose have 4 or 5 dead fish, and it's over a pound penalty in your catch. You can't let that happen. Now, once the fish are successfully bagged, and I've got them, I'm going to proceed through the weigh-in line. Go through the series of cooled tanks up to our checking station where our partner has to initial our weigh ticket. If he felt that anything was not above board, he has the right to actually not initial our weigh ticket. Therefore, our catch is not valid unless our partner does initial our ticket. Initial the ticket, and we proceed on to what we call the bump station, where they actually check our fish to make sure, A, that they're all alive, that you don't have too many fish. We're allowed 5 fish per day. That's a minimum of 5 or a maximum of 5 fish per day, and they all have to be a minimum length limit. Now, a lot of times that will go by the state regulations, but we never go by a less than 12 inches. We never fish a tournament where we allow fish less than 12 inches, but some states require 14 inches, 15, and even 16 in some of the Atlanta, Georgia has a couple of lakes around there that have a 16-inch limit. Lake West Point, 16 inches, so it's a whopper just to be a keeper. But they have to be that minimum length limit. If they're not, your fish is culled, and it's a pound penalty if you try and weigh a short fish. Another thing is, what if you get in your live well and you pull out 6 fish? You've messed up in your culling process and you have 6 fish. They cull your biggest fish and penalize you a pound. So that's how they get down, is they cull your biggest fish. You don't want to make any of those mistakes in this game, especially when every ounce could cost you thousands of dollars. Once my fish are checked in at the bump station, then the fun part comes. We get to go up and hang out with Fish Fishburne on the weigh-in stand and tease around and joke around with him. and see what our catch weighs.
10 pounds, 10 ounces. Show me a couple of these bass. Mr. Scroggins has locked the lead up. Joe, you need a limit. Did you bring it?
Yeah, fish, but they're not very big. But I tell you what, as hard as it is out there, if I could just get 5 more tomorrow, I said 7 pounds a day. I'm going to fall a little short of that today.
The weight's 5'7", 5 pounds, 7 ounces. That's good.
Well, you know, it's hanging in there. It's going to give me about 13.5 for 2 days. And, you know, the water that we're fishing is, you know, is pretty limited. And it just seems like they're just not really doing it yet. You just kind of go back and forth over the same areas. And every now and then you get a bite. And the fog delay really crunches you, you know, because you only get a few hours of fishing time. And, you know, maybe tomorrow we'll get a full day, and maybe I'll get 7 or 8 pounds and pop me back up to where I need to be.
Show me a big limit, Joe Thomas.
Once we weigh our catch, we actually get a copy of that day's weight certificate. For me, that goes right in my pocket. That's my insurance policy that I get credit for everything I caught. And we proceed immediately to a large board where we're paired with our next day partners. Most of the time, your partner is in the same flight that you are, therefore they're going to be near that area real soon. You meet your next day partner, you discuss whose boat you're going to use, you discuss fishing areas, things like that. Fortunately, in this tournament at St. John's, I was right near the top 20, 25 the whole tournament, and usually when you're in the top, the guys will let you do your own thing. The guys that I drew weren't doing so well in the tournament, and they were willing to ride with me and pretty much give me full control of what I wanted to do, which is real critical when you're fishing a kind of a unique situation like I am up in Rodman Reservoir. And what about those bass? The final thing that happens to them is they get a ride in this cool release boat, live release. BASS has a live release boat that actually cools the bass down even further, and instead of releasing them in a congested little harbor with lots of boats and lots of bubbles and things that are maybe not real healthy for them, that release boat actually goes out into the open water and distributes those fish over a large area, which keeps them from being dumped into one spot. Found out a long time ago through research, if you take a bass from open water and you take them in a little confined harbor, especially in the summertime, their chance of survival is diminished dramatically. Take them out in that open water and release them. Bass rarely has mortality of much more than 2%, which is tremendous when you think about the numbers of fish that could be killed if they weren't handled properly.
Stay tuned for more tips and tricks when Angler on Tour continues.
And then that's pretty much it for me. I'm back on the trailer as quick as possible, fill the tanks up, and get back to the room, where typically what I'll do is I'll re-spool the reels that I've been using a lot that day, sharpen or change hooks, just kind of tweak my tackle, add oil to my oil reservoir. A lot of guys have really messed up, been out there in the middle of the lake and remember to get gas but forgot to fill their oil reservoir. I have a checklist that I just basically go through and work my way through so that there's everything ready. When I put that cover on for my boat that night, it's ready to go the next morning, and all the variables are taken care of. It's my living, and that's so critical that I have everything, all my ducks in a row. Real important.
Let's go over Joe's fishing checklist. First, he fills the fuel tank in both the boat and truck. Then he re-spools his reels for the next day, followed by sharpening or changing the hooks. Next, he'll tweak his tackle, making sure he has what he needs and that they're all ready to go. Then he adds oil to the boat's oil reservoir. Next thing, Joe refamiliarizes himself with the area he'll be fishing in. Set up a game plan for the next day's events. And finally, Joe checks the weather for the day he'll be fishing, so he knows what he'll be up against. Now, here's Joe Thomas with more Outdoor Channel tips of the day.
Hi, I'm Joe Thomas, and this week's Team Outdoor Channel tip has to do with fish and current. Fish relate to current and current breaks, and it's so critical when you're fishing the current, whether it's a creek or a river system, anywhere you have flowing water, that you point your boat into the current, stay on the trolling motor, and make casts up current and let your bait work downstream. Bass will typically find ambush spots just out of the current, and baits that are flowing down with the current are a lot more readily accepted than baits that are coming against the current. So remember, cast upstream, work the bait down into those eddy currents, and hang on, because that big strike's fixing to come. This Team Outdoor Channel tip is kind of designed to help you speed up your fishing. It's a fast world. Everybody's doing things faster, but everybody loves to throw a Carolina rig. The downside to a Carolina rig, slow rigging. Tie a knot, put a leader on, put a swivel on, lots of knots, lots of time consuming. This new rig by Arky called the Carolina One Step literally speeds my fishing up by allowing me to pull one little rubber stop out, grab the beads and the rubber stops here that are built into the rig, and now I immediately have a full Carolina rig. All I have to do is tie on the hook. A super little rig. The Carolina One Step by Arky, one of the finest little speed-me-up tools I've ever found for tournament fishing.
It's time for another piece of Angler on Tour trivia. This question states the total weight of fish caught by the entire field at this St. John's event was about A, 1,500 pounds, was it B, 2,000 pounds, C, 2,400 pounds, or D, 2,800 pounds? St. John's Invitational Tournament.
You know, the St. John's River Tournament really played out kind of the way I wanted it to. The first day, I had a fairly cooperative partner. I only got about 3.5 hours on my fish because of the lock, and spent a little time on his water, but had a good catch, caught over 7 pounds in the top 30 after day one. Day two was its own challenge because of the fact that we had a lengthy fog delay, and by the time I got through the locks and to my water, I only had 2.5 hours to fish, and ended up not able to cull any fish. I caught just 5 that weighed 5 pounds 11 ounces, but it was tough for everybody because of the shortened day, and I actually moved up into a tie for 25th place. The final day was pretty neat because we actually got to take a camera and follow me along and get to see me fishing a little bit. And as you can see, the river channel at Rodman, it is literally that. The whole reservoir has been reduced to this windy river channel. Probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever fished in Florida, just as scenic as it gets. And you got to be on your toes when you're driving, because I mean, it's like running a Grand Prix course up there. But as you can see, I'm fishing these outside bends in the river channel here, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my little jerkbait, my little gold jerkbait, and I'm making long casts up the outer bend and snapping my rod with my rod tip low, snapping it and working that little jerkbait down. And I'm actually not working it very fast. If you watch there, you can see I just snap it, stop, snap it, stop. And I'm actually letting the current carry that bait right down along the edge of that little bit of hydrillas there, and that's the key. You have to face your boat. If you'll notice, I'm constantly facing my boat into the current too. If you would fish the bait against the current, you never get a bite. But the outer bends and letting that bait come down with the current and fighting it with my trolling motor, that was the whole key. You also notice too, I had a really good partner the last day. He wasn't in contention. He laid back, he stayed in the back deck of the boat, and he let me do my thing. And as you see, I'm culling here by about 9:45 in the morning, which was my best day, and actually was able to upgrade my stringer through the day and end up with 5 fish that weighed 8 pounds 11 ounces, moved me into 12th place. The tournament was won by the guy they planned on winning it. It was local, river rat, total St. John's River expert, Wayne Scroggins. He blew the field away, catching 15 pounds consistently through the tournament, weighed in over 45 pounds, and just had an incredible finish. To give you an idea of the separation, at 12th place, I had 22 pounds and was in 12th place. He had over 45 pounds to win the event. He really distanced himself from the field. But again, it's his home pond. He's literally, in the fall, he wins almost every tournament that's down there. And he had a great event. And you know, Wayne Scroggins is your champion of your first invitational event. For tournament number 1 on the east side, they're going to take 5 spots to the Classic, and we only got 2 more. I like my odds. I like where I'm at. I feel comfortable with what I did, and I feel like I maximized what I had to work with in that tournament. And you know, I'm excited about Lake Martin in March, which will be our second of 3 invitationals. So, you know, come away from this tournament feeling real good. If there is a downside, sure would like to be able to have a little bit of time to just sit back and enjoy the good tournament finish, but can't happen. We're going to pack up tonight, and we're heading straight down to Lake Toho for the tour event down there. Actually, we'll be on the water at 5:45 in the morning practicing, and got to gear up and do the next tournament. But for now, it's been a pretty good event.
It's time for Angler on Tour, a behind-the-scenes look at the life of a professional bass fisherman. Featuring Team Outdoor Channel angler Joe Thomas.